So I'd just like to welcome Jhampa Shaneman to our center. He's new to us, so we are grateful that he was able to accept our invitation. He was one of Lama Yeshe's first disciples, the first monk to take ordination in our tradition. So after that, he accumulated multiple years of short retreat and also a great retreat. So he's had decades and decades of study and meditation. So we're in incredibly competent hands today, and we're grateful that he was able to be here and to help us understand this profound text. So thank you very much.
The refuge prayers and such. Am I leading them or you, Lobsang?
If you would like to lead refuge and bodhicitta, and then I'll do the mandala offering.
Okay. I like to do things in English. First to clarify, before we even start, let's check our motivation. It's really important to be motivated correctly, but also with some, amplitude to it. So, for example, we might be thinking, oh, good, maybe I'll attend some interesting teachings and such. This would be good for my practice. This is good, that's personal karma. But, we often say for the benefit of all sentient beings. Sri Chenren Rinpoche one time commented, he said, when you talk about all sentient beings, that's too big. It's much more important to start off with some sentient beings that you actually care about. And why? Because if we look at the 4 key rules of karma, karma is definite, karma increases. If you don't do it, don't expect the result. And if you don't do anything, it'll finally ripen. And so if you don't actually, have a feeling, you're not collecting the karma. So what I would recommend is that bring to mind, especially a child that you care about. And why do I say a child? Well, if you brought to mind, let's say your mother or your father, generally speaking, they're complicated. Come on, they're adults. So if you bring to mind a child, when 4 or 5, 6 years old, they're young, you want them to grow up well, you want them to be well educated, you don't want them to have traumas. You have incredibly good feelings for that child. And I guess if we were a Buddha, we would have that sort of feeling for all sentient beings, but we're not a Buddha yet. So to actually generate the feeling, I would recommend first a child, but if, for example, you're single, maybe if you have a pet dog or a cat, because again, I would love to help my dog or cat become more enlightened, and I'd like to offer that relationship to them. And that's why I'm attending these teachings. So motivation is so important. So we could have just gone right into the prayer. It says right there, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I gather from listening to the Dharma, I become a Buddha and benefit all sentient beings. I don't know, I can say it pretty fast. I can say it in Tibetan even faster. It doesn't mean I collected any karma. So, it's really important to slow down a little bit and such. And periodically just go through a prayer like that, which, maybe some of us have memorized it and such, but then often we don't put much, we have the memory, but we don't really put much karma to it. So bringing to mind someone you love, particularly a child, but thing, and then say, well, gee, love to offer a more enlightened relationship to that person. And if there's love in your heart, then okay, now you're getting some karma. And of course it has the objective of to become more enlightened. And for that reason then, in front of us, of course, we have Buddha Shakyamuni. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create from listening to the Dharma, I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I collect through listening to the Dharma or teaching the Dharma, May I become a Buddha and benefit all sentient beings.
This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamirayatayami.
Okay, so the teaching we're going to do today is Maitreya Buddha. And I'm assuming there's quite a nicely educated Buddhist audience here, or at least a reasonably educated Buddhist audience. So it's nice to be able to talk about specifics and not have to do a lot of generalization presentation. Now, one thing that I really like to always emphasize, if we do talk about, for example, I took refuge in the Buddha, is that strictly speaking, the Buddha is for inspiration. The Buddha walked the path, attained enlightenment, came back, and then shared the path with us. And so that is both an object of our faith, but more it's an object of inspiration. He did it, or for example, Tara, she did it, and so we can do it. And they were ordinary beings at one time, which then brings up the really important thing about why would we have a lot of feeling about those Buddhas, male or female? And I like to go back to the idea of, multiple rebirths. So Jatata tales where, we have all the stories of the Buddha. And in the text of Lama Yeshe, we have some of the stories of Maitreya Buddha in his previous rebirths. But the big thing to focus on, I think, is that, okay, and I actually, although, we sometimes say, yes, I want to become enlightened in one rebirth, I really like the idea that Buddha Shakyamuni took 3 countless aeons. Why? Well, okay, when he became enlightened, and then Buddha Maitreya Buddha is saying, they could remember all their past rebirths. And so what they would remember is all the different rebirths they had. And that would be then, one of those rebirths would be quite similar to our rebirth right now. Maybe we didn't have cell phones, but the thing is, we would have this thing. So, being married, being divorced, being, healthy, being ill, being an important person, being a nobody, all of those different rebirths, all those different situations, And so in each one of them, what they brought to it, though, was a little bit of bodhicitta. Oh, man, work on this situation, and improve it. I mean, there's one fun story. It comes from one of the Jagata tales, and it's not a very popular one because it has Siddhartha was a layperson. And Siddhartha, because I'm focusing first on Buddha Shakyamuni because I know more of his stories. But Siddhartha was a young man living in the forest with his wife, and he was a woodcutter. He'd go out in the forest, chop firewood, and then take it to the village, and then he would sell it to the people in the village, and he'd come back into the forest, where his wife had they had their little cottage in the forest. And there he would then have his lunch, and then they would pray and meditate, because they were Buddhist. And supposedly she was also Yodashara from a previous rebirth. So anyway, so it said that in one of those rebirths, or one of those days, and he went off to collect the firewood, but it was really hot, and then there's a lot of mosquitoes and things. And so he was out chopping firewood and this and that, but he couldn't find much for some reason. Just find it. And then whatever he did find, he took to the village and tried to sell it, and nobody wanted to buy it. So it's really a miserable day for Siddhartha. Like, it's horrible, bad day, Anyway, well, at the same time, let's say Yodashara, his wife back in the little cottage, she was making his stir-fried vegetables and his tortillas or whatever it would be, chapatis, I guess. Okay, and such. And one moment then, a very old monk came to the door. He was really old and very decrepit looking, and just in pathetic shape, and he came to the door and he was begging. And she looked in his eye and she could see that he was really holy, because we all say that the eye is the doorway to the soul or to your Buddha nature. And she said, oh, this man's very holy. And so she gave him all of the food of that day. And so he was very polite. He said, thank you very much. And he went to the edge of their little clearing and stuff. And he sat down and politely then started to eat. So anyway, Siddhartha came back and he was really miffed about the thing. He hadn't had a good day, had mosquito bites and everything like that. And he arrives back and he arrives to the door and he looks in this little cottage, and there's his wife smiling at him, all happy, but there's no food. Where's the food? I just had a miserable day. And then he looks over and he sees this dirty old man sitting at the edge of their clearing, eating his vegetables and his tortillas or chapatis, And he got majorly choked. Like, oh, how dare you do that? I worked so hard. I went today and it was difficult and the mosquitoes bit me and nobody bought my firewood and damn it, And I said, and look at that old man over there. He's old, he's decrepit, he doesn't have any teeth, he's got skin that's all black, just lots of curses, so whatever, yeah, a lot of other things. He's swearing away like this, and so at that moment, he's just sort of ventilating all of his anger. She starts to say a prayer and she says, oh, for my dear husband, who now is so silly, in the future rebirth, when he's born and he's decrepit and his body is really infirm and his skin is ugly and he looks really sort of pathetic, may I still fall in love with him and may I help him in his path towards enlightenment, as his partner then, And so she is saying that prayer. And at the edge of the forest, of course, the old man, he was realized saint. He sat there and he started to say a prayer for this poor young guy, this 25-year-old guy who was just freaking out over a chapati, a tortilla, whatever, okay, in the future, when this person takes a really bad rebirth, may I go to that realm and take him out of that bad realm and help him give him the Dharma and things like that. So Siddhartha sort of suddenly sees, his wife's praying and this guy's praying, and he goes, oh, I lost it. I just destroyed it. Millions of years of good karma. Quoting from Shantideva. Anyway, so he calmed down, took 3 breaths, and then he did first 3 prostrations to his wife, because he knew that was important. And then he went over and did 3 prostrations to the monk and said, please forgive me, I'm so sorry. So then anyway, the monk then gave the 2 of them Dharma teachings and such like that. But I share this story because for me, especially for those of you in the audience that are lay people, we all have lots of crazy situations. But if we can put the Dharma, like our process of becoming enlightened, as the context of our relationships, so we're helping ourselves become more enlightened, we're helping other people become more enlightened, that's really good. But the big point is that, let's say Maitreya Buddha or Shakyamuni, if they're omniscient mind, perceive their previous rebirth where that had happened. So right now, for example, we say that Buddha has an omniscient mind, so he can look in your mind right now, and he can see, you had the rebirth that you have right now, what's happening for you. And because he has 3 countless aeons of rebirths to draw on, he has empathy. Because we talk about why would a Buddha respond? Now, Buddhas are inconceivable, are not premeditated, spontaneous in their compassion. Well, where would that come from? Okay, I'm certainly, I don't know totally, but I would just say one side would be empathy. That they go, whoa, I've been there, I've done that. So the why we have big faith with Maitreya Buddha or Buddha Shakyamuni or Tara is that they've had millions of rebirths and they've had millions of experiences. And when they look at us, it's not like they look at us and go, oh, we're a little sentient being, No, they have authentic connection, empathy with us because of their omniscient mind remembering all their rebirths and a spontaneous compassion. And similar, for example, you could say to Yoda Shara in that particular story I shared, she immediately put her relationship in context of her Dharma practice. And it didn't mean that it was less for Siddhartha. Sometimes people think that if you practice the Dharma, people aren't so important. No, who you are in the relationship with them is the big important thing. So anyway, I share that because for me, when I look at a Buddha statue now, I look at it totally like that. Like whoa, the Buddha knows exactly where I'm at. The Buddha knows exactly what type of rebirth I'm having, how my thoughts and feelings are, because the Buddha had experiences like that in the previous rebirth. And so whether you talk about that story of Buddha Shakyamuni, or where he was a yogi practicing patience in the forest, and a king came with his court, and they all got drunk, and then whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of stories of the previous rebirths, and then there's stories of him as a monkey or him as an elephant. I mean, and what's really important is to open our mind that whatever rebirth we're in, we can bring bodhicitta to that rebirth. And what does that mean? It means, well, I have a context that when I'm practicing, may I bring the people in my life, may I bring the Dharma Center to a more enlightened position, may I bring my dog and cat to a more enlightened position, may they get a better rebirth because of their relationship with me, their karma with me. So all of that's really, for me, that's the lifeblood of a good Dharma practice, so it makes it very real for us. Okay, so that's the first thing, is just to sort of touch base about, Buddha Maitreya Buddha. He's now in the Tushita Pure Land, and he's with Tsongkhapa and all the many great saints, and such, teaching the Dharma. So we're going to have a connection. And actually, this particular practice is sadhana, particularly for Maitreya Buddha. But if you do the 100 Gods of Tushita, which is the Guru Yoga practice of Tsongkhapa, it includes Maitreya Buddha. So that's a very nice addition. So if you did already have a commitment with, for example, the 100 Gods of Tushita or Gadan Lagyama in Tibetan, that you could switch over to that. And you could do a little bit of Maitreya's mantra if you wanted before you actually moved over to the Guru Yoga of Tsongkhapa. And that way you don't have a lot of different practices and sadhanas. As Westerners, except for Losang, who's a monk, he's got lots of practice and lots of time. So anyway, the rest of us are lay people, and it's important not to clutter ourselves with lots of commitments that basically just mean we're doing this prayer and we're doing that prayer and we're doing this thing. And so then we really just are always just sort of maintaining commitment, but are we actually meditating much? So I suggest very much that you guys take that into consideration, that, don't run after a lot of commitments, because you end up with just sort of a lot of practice, which maybe is just recitation, not so much meditation. But that's just a side comment on my part. So what we have then is we have the practice of Maitreya Buddha. Now, I gave the sadhana, and it's just a simple 3-page thing. So it's very simple. So we have Maitreya Buddha. We have context now. Maitreya Buddha has gone through 3 aeons of rebirths, is now fully enlightened, will become enlightened as the next Buddha, Buddha number 5, and such. And so it's good to have a common connection with him and things. And it said, I think in Lama Yeshe's text, it said, Maitreya Buddha made a promise, if any of us in the time of Buddha Shakyamuni keep virtue, that they will become, that these sentient beings will become my personal students when I take a manifestation of being a Buddha and Maitreya, and I will help them to become enlightened. So just being virtuous will give us a good karma connection with Maitreya Buddha. So refuge in bodhicitta. Now I'm on the sadhana. I'll base all the commentary off of the sadhana because it makes it something you can reflect on and such easily. And I'm going to talk for about 40 minutes. I'll open it to questions, and then I'm going to go back to teaching again because it's good it's good to sort of give an opportunity to ask questions. So in the refuge, it says, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the merits I collect through listening to Dharma, or in this case, it would be the 6 perfections. Sorry, I just copied and pasted that. That was an error. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. One thing in there which says, until I'm enlightened, these are just sort of side things, but did you know that if you took precepts, like 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 precepts, or if you have a novice ordination as a monk or a nun, or if you have a full ordination, that the actual basis of that ordination is on your body. So that when you die, that ordination will cease to exist. The reason for that is because if, for example, you were ordained as a monk or nun, or you had 5 precepts or 4 precepts or whatever, and they weren't based on your body, that they would continue to the next rebirth. And so therefore, then you would immediately start accumulating karma contrary to your ordination or your precepts that you have, or you could anyway. You could. So that's on the basis of your body. But bodhicitta is on the basis of your mind. And that is, again, we come back to the story of Yudhishthira with Siddhartha, is that in this rebirth, may I bring some bodhicitta, the wish to bring myself and other sentient beings to a more enlightened position. That can go to another rebirth because it's an intention. You could say, okay, there's all the precepts, but no, that's literally the intention. It's not like that you sort of have a rule book that you take to the next rebirth. You take the enthusiasm, the good energy in your heart of, in this rebirth, with the people I live with the pets I have in my life, or with whatever I'm involved with, may I be something beneficial for them to bring them to a more enlightened state. So the until I'm enlightened is quite important, is to sort of see that. And the traditional example is, let's say you're going to go to San Francisco. Okay. So on the trip, let's say you got as far as, I don't know, wherever you're coming from, but let's say you got to Salt Lake City, and you thought, this is pretty nice, you ought to stay here. That's sort of like your practice didn't have a clarity of a goal. And so therefore you could stop prior to your actual attainment of what you want. So by saying, I'm working from now until I become fully enlightened, that's really quite important. It's like I'm going to go all the way to San Francisco. I'm not going to stop early. Okay. So that's first off, just from now until enlightenment, and then think of it, really put it into the context of the in this rebirth, may I offer more enlightened relationships to all the sentient beings, and even a more enlightened relationship to myself, And then why or how? Well, I have the Buddha inspiration, I have the Dharma, which is the teachings, and I have the Sangha, which is my friends and spiritual community. By the merits I create through, of course, the 6 perfections, not listening to Dharma, but maybe listening to Dharma. May I become a Buddha, may I become enlightened, in order to benefit all sentient beings. Say that 3 times. And I'm sorry, I didn't sort of include that object of refuge. The object in front of us would be Maitreya Buddha in this particular case. And again, you have the small image at the top of the text. But the main point would be is that it's that. And I'm sorry, I'm actually jumping around a bit. Sorry. But we don't have a lot of time, so it's all the details. As I said earlier, hopefully you're a well-educated Buddhist audience. So in front of you, you'd have Maitreya Buddha, you'd have some Dharma text behind him, then you could have different disciples on the left and right side. For example, in this case, you could have Tsongkhapa and supposedly Vajrapani. They live in Tushita with him. They're the Bodhisattvas, or it seems Buddha's Bodhisattvas disciples. And there you have your Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then, as I said, try to make it from now on to become fully enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And in the text of Lama Yeshe, although in his text we didn't see a specific prayer, we took one, I believe, from Chidamani Tara. In particular, in order to benefit all my mother sentient beings quickly and more quickly, I must achieve the precious state of perfect and complete Buddhahood. Therefore, I am going to meditate the yoga of the Buddha Maitreya. And that's sort of putting a little more emphasis on. The actual name for that is called driving a stake in the Tibetan languages. That's what it's referred to. And it's like, yeah, you took refuge, so you have a general sense of what you're doing, but then you really drive a stake into the ground, like, really make a strong statement, which is, hey, I'm really going to do this for the benefit of sentient beings. And I'm going to rely on the practice of Maitreya Buddha. So that we have the more precious bodhicitta. One thing to talk about is, we often hear nowadays about love yourself. It's sort of something that's important to do. It's sort of, you got to love yourself before you can love others and things like that. And I sometimes have a little bit of trouble because it's on the edges of being egocentric. But one thing to take into consideration is that if you have the attitude of bodhicitta, may I bring myself and all sentient beings into enlightenment. Okay, well, what's obstructing enlightenment? Well, it's the delusions. So what you really want to do is to bring your delusions into enlightenment. So example would be for example, anger. So inside of yourself. So you start off with yourself. So you say, okay, I get angry about stuff, like in traffic jams or the weather or mosquitoes or whatever it might be. So I get angry. So you have that thought, that feeling. Okay. But then you can say, okay, well, I would like to bring my anger to enlightenment. So you immediately establish a constructive relationship with your anger. It's like, yes, any of you would be, that anger is destructive. It's your enemy. Destroy it, things like that. It's not good, and things like that. But the bodhisattva attitude is a little different. It's sort of the wish to be of benefit. So if you first say to your own anger, okay, anger, oh, hi, anger, you're there, Okay, well, I'd like to bring you into enlightenment, so I'm going to dialogue with you. I'm going to help you become more enlightened. I'm going to say, well, you're not going to benefit. You won't really be skillful in solving these problems. You're going to make me unhappy. You make other people feel very uncomfortable. Give me indigestion. I won't sleep at night. And bottom line, it doesn't solve the problem. Even if you win by being angry, just people start to avoid you. So no benefit. So say, hey, anger, that. I've told the story before, but way back when, and it's sort of fun when I hear something. I just celebrated 52 years of being a Buddhist, and I was 20 years old when I got ordained in India with Lama Yeshe and Geshe Rabten and the Dalai Lama in 1970. 1970, yeah, 1971. Well, I was still 20, but it's 1971. Anyway, but about 1975 or 76. His Holiness the Dalai Lama had a meeting with us, and it was all of us Westerners. There's actually a couple of pictures on Facebook and things. There's about 15 or 20 of us that were there. Some of the real originals, like Piero Cherry and Nolan Kadrup and Ursula from Germany. These are all the real originals. Okay. Anyway, and so we had this audience, and so we all went in, did our 3 prostrations, and Dalai Lama was there, and he was very sweet and very kind, asked about what country we were from and why we were interested in Buddhism and, things like that. It was just really great. And then at one point, when we sing, he says, well, now tell me, I have a question. He says, how do you deal with your sexual feelings? And this is the Dalai Lama, like the Pope of Buddhism. I just asked all of us, and all of us were in our 20s, with full of the enthusiasm of life and procreation. How do you deal with your sexual feelings? And it was sort of like, I think the whole room went like, ooh, very embarrassing. Anyway, and then His Holiness started laughing and laughing and laughing. He says, well, I'll tell you what I do. And so he said, what I do is I imagine a chair in front of me, and I put Dalai Lama with desire for a relationship in front of me. And then I have a dialogue with that. And I'd say, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm a monk. And then the guy would say, but no, I want a relationship. And he said, well, no, but I have precepts and I'm helping the Tibetan people. And he says, I don't care. I want a relationship, like this. And then, he carried on like that for a few minutes. And he says, and sometimes I win and sometimes I lose. Anyway, so, but the point being, the more important point is you dialogue. You don't suppress, you dialogue, and you try to bring your delusions to a better position. And your delusion coming to a better position means your delusion became more enlightened. It stopped being a problem. And if you can do that to yourself, then you'll have a lot of skill in doing it with others. So when they say love yourself, love your delusions. And I don't mean in a stupid way. What I mean is that when your anger comes up, you say, oh, dear anger, here you are. You think you're going to do the right thing to make me happy, but you're not. And I'm going to explain why. And so you make your anger more enlightened. And if you can do that with yourself, when somebody else is angry, providing the situation is appropriate, that's always good to exercise intelligence, then you can be more constructive. In fact, you can love the person. One of the biggest things with anger, which is so easy to do, is basically an angry person is unhappy. They're suffering. And if you can see that, rather than taking it personally, they're attacking me, I got to get defensive, you just look at them and go, whoa, you're really unhappy. And you can have actually compassion for them, but you can even have love for them. How would you have love? Because you know how to deal with your own anger. You've loved your own anger. Anyway, you might think I'm off topic, but I'm not. I think this is really important because we're in the Bodhisattva vehicle. We're not in the Hinayana vehicle of just suppression and escape. We're in the practice of trying to be a great benefit. So, and we're talking about Maitreya Buddha, who's the next Buddha to come. Maybe we want to be a high-level Bodhisattva with him, or maybe we could become a Buddha. So how does that happen? Well, it happens because we work constructively with our delusions. For example, Yudhishthira with Siddhartha in that story. She could have said, "Oh, stupid husband, I never want that guy in my life again." Could have said that, isn't it? I want a more enlightened husband. No, she said, no. My compassion and my love for him was going to say, no, let's get together and go to the future rebirth, and as Dharma friends, Dharma practitioners. So that is for the benefit of all sentient beings, but I'm just saying that if you can first start having a constructive relationship with your delusions, you might find that you can actually work with them and solve them a lot faster and better. And it gives you the automatic skill of being able to work better with other sentient beings who have desire, attachment, aversion, jealousy, competitiveness, whatever else, by being in touch with your own. Okay. So I'll talk for another 10 minutes, and then we're going to switch over to questions. The next, then, that we have 7-room prayer in the sadhana that we published. I mentally offer, and I couldn't find an FPMT version of this, so I just picked one from one of my sadhanas. But if you have one, you can stick it in there. I'm doing, now it's so easy to describe. Grab your word processor, take a sadhana, and turn it the way you want it. I mentally offer salutation with respect to my three faculties, which is I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. Now, prostrations are interesting. For most of us, we could take several of items that we own, whether it's a really nice, cell phone, actually, like, ooh, my was it Apple 13, whatever it is nowadays, or my Google or whatever, my thing, it's my precious. And in one way, it's like, I make 3 prostrations to you because you keep me in touch with the world. Or let's say you have some really nice clothes, you have a particular shirt or set of pants, and I'm talking to you lay people, for, Love Sankhya doesn't have any of this problem. But for us, we have a nice shirt. When you look at the shirt and go, whoa, I look really good in that shirt. I look really beautiful in that blouse. Yes, I feel good, That's like making 3 prostrations to that, And we do that with a lot of stuff. And we make 3 prostrations to money. We make 3 prostrations to our car, maybe, depends on you. Each one of us is individual. But what we do is we venerate that object. And so when we make a prostration, we venerate Buddhas. And don't just venerate, oh, it's the Buddha. Think about, again, 3 countless aeons of rebirths. And in those rebirths, had so many rebirths like mine right now. Wow, and yet you come back and you have love for me. You understand me, you empathize with me. You're special. I'm really, really happy to make 3 prostrations. Lama Zopa, in one of his commentaries, has the ecstatic 100,000 prostrations or something like that. And that's if you have the right mind. You think about, you're making a prostration to a being who has all of that wisdom and compassion and understands you. That's an incredible object to make a prostration to compared to your car, or your money, or your wristwatch, or your glasses, or whatever you might have. Okay. So that's prostration. And again, put it in context. I present all offerings, material and imagined, without exception. So again, just whatever you have on your altar. Even, if you just, I have students who they're Catholic in a Catholic family, and they can't really have an altar because it's not appropriate, but they have a picture of the Buddha. So in front of that, just putting a bowl of water or an apple, that's an altar, so that's making offerings. I acknowledge all negative actions accumulated since time without beginning. I really enjoy that one because if you think about being, you have to really reflect on that you have Buddha nature. Okay, your Buddha nature, your clear light mind, whatever you want to call it, is very profound. As things get coarser, you come from that very clear light mind to a coarser level of consciousness. But that's where your delusions are. Okay, and then finally you're back in sort of mundane world with however you act and think. Okay, so when you make a confession, it's called shakpa in Tibetan, actually. It means to crack open. to open up is the Tibetan word. Okay. That when you do that, what you're doing is you're willing to say, hey, you can look at all parts of you without any problem. And that's embarrassing, but that's what it is. Now, why though? Because if your consciousness was able to go very deep down in sort of your clear light nature, okay, you don't want any road bumps. You don't want any sort of things getting in the way. You don't want something that you hidden away and didn't want to talk about. Or when you come back out, you want to sort of, hey, I put that in the correct context and correct perspective. So whether you're going in or whether you're coming out, which we'll talk about in a few minutes when we get to the practice of being Maitreya Buddha, that you have like, hey, I opened up. I didn't hide any part of me. And yeah, that part over there, I'm really embarrassed about. I said that thing to that person. It was really nasty. I really hit them hard with that hard word, or I did this. And I don't want to show that to anybody. Private. No, don't do that. Yeah, say, yay, I'm available. I'm open. I find that one really interesting. Okay, so all my negative actions, and what you do is you put them in context. I don't want to repeat that. I teach here in Mexico, and we have the 4 opponent powers, which totally are wonderful. But to put it in simple terms, you could just say, "Woo, I regret that. I don't want to do it again." That alone is a huge purification. Now, if you throw in Vajrasattva, prostrations, just shamatha meditation, that's all great. That's a purification technique. And obviously it's in the context of taking refuge because you want to be a better person. So, but just that, like, I don't want to do that again. And it's a regret. It's not like I'm guilty, I'm bad. No, it's just, I don't want to do that again. So that's something about compassion, which I really enjoy. I rejoice in the virtue of all ordinary and sentient beings. And you should take that into consideration when you, for example, go to a store and someone in front of you opens the door for another person. Rejoice. Be happy about that. Like, wow, that's a nice person. That's a nice activity that person just did. That's rejoicing at mundane actions. Then the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Pangu Rinpoche, all of these great masters and lamas and things like that. Wow, I mean, that's rejoicing at their good works. But you can rejoice at mundane things. Like when you're driving your car and someone slows down a bit to let another person come in front. Rejoice at that. That's generosity. So what you're doing is you're reaffirming your own good feelings of being a nice person, and you're also recognizing when it's done by others and you're being happy about it. That's rejoicing. Supplicate for turning the Dharma, the profound sense of Dharma. That's great. So yeah. Actually then also live a long life. That's senior. I supplicate for turning the Dharma, the profound sense of Dharma. I dedicate interesting. I guess I miscopied. It should have been one for long life with the teachers. And the part of that then would be that, how incredible that we have the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa in the world, It would be pretty sad when they're not here, hopefully somebody else will step up, but right now let's have them go away. We want them. And because they personify something that makes the world a better place. And then may they teach the Holy Dharma. So forgive me, I threw this together yesterday, so there are minor errors in there. Yeah, there's only 6 lines. It should have been 7 lines, and I'm not sure why I only got 6 lines there. But anyway, that's a 7-line prayer, minus the asking teachers to live long lives. Okay, so apologize for that. Again, like I say, it was done quickly. Actually, that's good. That's perfect. 40 minutes. That's exactly where I wanted to be. I want to open it to questions and answers. So if I talk nonstop, I'll put you all asleep. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, or put your hand up and then I'll say your name. I'm going to see if I can make the view gallery. Okay, there we go. There's a gallery. If somebody wants to show their hand or ask a question about anything I said or anything that's related to their Dharma practice, please ask. I put you all to sleep. So if nothing else, I'm going to rest my voice. So. Oh wait, there's a chat there. Let's see. Oh, there's, okay, I saw the prayer mention. Okay. Well, you're all very contented. Okay, so I'm going to use there. So I like to just review just a teeny bit. Like they say when you give teachings, Ling Rinpoche told me this, you should always repeat it 3 times. So if you're, for example, teaching over a period of days, you do the review of what you've taught 2 times one day, and then the 3rd day you do a quick review of it, and then you carry on with 2 times of the next material, and then the following day you review it. So in this case, we're only doing a 1-day thing, so I'll just do a once review. Going for refuge from now until enlightenment. Remember, it's not just for this rebirth, but it's for all of the rebirths. Have you ever considered that actually, like, I can say for myself, I have no idea who the previous guy was. I'm assuming it was a guy, maybe it was a girl, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know their name. I don't know where they lived. I don't know what they did. I have to say they did some Dharma because, hey, I'm in the Dharma and I really like it. But that's about it. So when we talk about work for your future lives, and I mean, I never really liked that very much. I know a distant thing, but you got to understand that that future person doesn't know you. So in one way, what you're doing in this rebirth is that, well, it could be a gift or a curse for that next person in line. So think of it this way. Let's say, you have a good practice, you've got a good heart, you're generous and things like that. Okay, all of those are like Christmas presents for that next rebirth. Because they won't know you, they won't know your name, they don't know what country you lived in, they don't know what you did, but they will feel the effect of your generosity, your goodwill, your ethics, your set of principles, those sorts of things, or your patience, they'll have that, But let's say you don't do that. Let's say, you're rather miserly, you're competitive, you have lousy relationships, they always break up really badly, you're never very successful and stuff like that. Well, that's all the stuff you're sending to the next rebirth. And that guy or girl's gonna have a rough time, like so sad for them, like, wow, like so much trouble. So you want to basically take that into consideration, that there is no real personal transfer. And I think there's a book by Dalai Lama and Venerable Thupten Chodron up there in Idaho or Washington State, wherever she has her Dharma Center. And it says there's a continuity of consciousness and the continuity of the imprints on consciousness. But you can't really say it's personal. It's rather just, continuity of things. And, it's not to say that suddenly, that there's not a personal sincerity and authenticity with who you are. Being sincere and authentic in this rebirth means the next person is going to be sincere and authentic. And if you're generous, good. And if you're, unpleasant to the people in your life, that's what you're going to give to the next person. And they're going to have a lousy rebirth, unless maybe they become a good Buddhist and they practice, and then they're going to give a gift to the next rebirth. So it's something really good to think about. So I really think about, like, for myself, that, okay, all the stuff I do in this rebirth are my Christmas presents or my birthday presents for that next rebirth. And if they did become a Buddhist, they may say, hey, thank you, Jhampa. There are a few areas which I'm a little shy of. For example, I wish I'd studied more in school. I didn't include that karma. I sort of went through school without studying very hard, and I regret that. I wanted the next guy in line or next girl in line, whoever it may be, may they have good study habits. I want to give that to them, because even if you studied this much, you'd be so much more successful in your life. At least I would be. You guys studied hard like that. So it's a whole different context to the future rebirth. It's like my presence, it's my generosity to that rebirth, and that's nice. That's generosity. So it's not me next rebirth. It's somebody who won't know me, who will either benefit or have problems because I didn't do very much work in this rebirth. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it puts a great feeling about working for the next rebirth. No, presence for the next rebirth. Really, really good feelings. Okay, so
John has his hand raised.
Okay, sure. John, yes. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, Jhampa. It's John Abel. I'm using a friend's Zoom account. I had a quick question for you about the 100 deities of Tushita or prayer.
Yep.
How would you incorporate that into a normal 6-session guru yoga practice? Would you take a piece of it out and stick it in and kind of incorporate that into 6-session, or would you do the whole Lama Chopa as a replacement to it? How would that work?
Okay, you're mixing things. Lama Chopa, Guru Puja, and 100 Gods of Tushita are different prayer sections. The Guru Puja or Lama Chopa is really extensive and it's really good. The 100 Gods of Tushita is like 2 pages. It's really short. And it's specifically you could call the abbreviated version of Guru Yoga, the Tsongkhapa. Lama Chopa is the extensive version to all the Buddhism Tsongkhapa. Okay, so that's just first thing. I don't know that 6-session Guru Yoga. It depends which version you do. I mean, there's like the 5-line one by Motra Dharmabhadra, or then there's the Losang Tensing version with I think 1 page, or then there's the long one with all of the different precepts in it. Whichever one you do, I mean, depends on your time. So I would look at it more in how much time I have a day for practice, and what level, where would I like to put my focus. So if you have some practice that you really want to do a lot of, for example, let's say you want to do the 100 Gods of Tushita, maybe doing a shorter version of 6-session Guru Yoga, which keeps that commitment, but then it gives you more time to do the 100 Gods of Tushita. So that way you sort of balance things. So if you're lucky, the Tibetan Lamas that give you initiations don't make it that it's a hard and fast, commitment every day for the rest of your life to do particular prayers. If they give you some sort of minimal thing that you can do, and then if you wanted to do the extensive version, that's very nice of them, especially for us in the West. If you're a monk or a nun, potentially you should have lots of time to do lots of different practices. That's because you're a monk or a nun. You've abandoned regular life, mundane life. But if you're a lay person, then we have to be careful about our time and commitments. So in answer to your question, I would just say 6-session Guru Yoga and the 100 Gods of Tushita are separate practices. You cannot really integrate them, but they're both really, you can do really short. I mean, 100 Gods of Tushita is 2 pages. It's nothing, and then you can focus in on the 5-line prayer of Tsongkhapa, which is really good. That is a unique practice. And that is actually the practice, one of the practices you can do for the 100,000 mantras of where you have to do the 100,000 Vajrasattva, 100,000 Mandala, 100,000 Refuge, 100,000 Guru Yoga, 100,000 things like that, whatever. Those that could be the 100 Gods of Tushita. It qualifies for the preliminary practice of Guru Yoga in the Gelupa lineage. Okay, but I don't think there's a way to put them together. You need to do them, as individual practices. But if you have it depends again. If you don't have a commitment, then you do what you want. If you have a commitment, then you have to do according to what the commitment was. So I'll leave it up to who gave you an initiation, what their commitment was, and things like that. You can, I would say, negotiate to some extent with some teachers. It is say, I have this in this practice, and although I want this initiation or this blessing or this bodhisattva vow from you, I can't do the commitment you ask. You can say that, I mean, whether they say yes or no is their choice, but the thing is you can do that, okay? So that's an answer to your question. That's the best I can give for you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is there any other hands up? If not, so just to continue anyway, it's so important to put the Dharma practice in a way that really works for you. Lama Yeshe emphasized that immensely all the time, and so this idea of your future rebirth, that person doesn't know you. Well, what are you sending to them? What are you going to give them? It's a really interesting question. And it puts your Dharma practice in a really, I personally think, a really good position. I'm going to give something nice to the other person. If they became a Buddhist, they might say thank you to me. Not that I would know, but okay. Now we'll come back to the sadhana. Okay, so now the big one. Om Sobowa Shudo Sarva Dharma Sobowa Shudo Hum. I and all phenomena are empty of self-existence, non-dual. I changed that just a little bit from Lama Yeshe's version in this text. I think he said all phenomena, all truly existent phenomena are non-dual. Okay, we're going to start with just a little bit different presentation of analysis of reality. And I've heard of some, well, let's say, this is the way that I like to do it. Okay, so right now you're all sitting there listening to me, okay? You know, you're all sitting there saying, yes, you know, watching your TV screen or your computer screen or your cell phone, whatever it might be, okay? All right, and, you know, we have this quite high sense of like, oh, I can get up and I can turn it off, I can walk away, I can go to the bathroom, whatever I want to do, you know, I can do that. But what you want to do is to say, no, okay, right now, we're all sitting in a room full of atmosphere. So if you want a more coarse example, it's like you're sitting at the bottom of a swimming pool and you're completely surrounded by the medium of the water, okay? Now, it's exactly the same, except the medium is thinner, it's air, okay? But you move your hands, your body, it's around you, it's in front, side, bottom, underneath you, like that. You are not independently self-existent. You are interdependent. But that context, that putting that perspective, I'm immersed in the atmosphere, okay, that immediately gives you this sense of like, okay, you're not so independent, isolated. Okay, this is the first thought. But the next thing is more important is take a breath. Okay, when you take a breath, that atmosphere goes inside of you. It actually gives you life. If one part of your body didn't get the oxygen from that inhalation, exhalation you just did, it would die. So analogy for that would be is you took a sponge and you put it down in the ocean, you know, a sponge with all those holes, and you squeeze it and the water goes to the end of the thing and comes back out, like that. That's what we are. I mean, we only have a couple holes for the stuff to come in and out of. But the point is, we are immersed and penetrated in the atmosphere. And so bringing that to mind, it's the thing is, it's reality. It's not a thing of, you know, it's not some sort of fabrication. It's just so easy to abandon the sense of independent self-existence. So just like you, hey, I mean, think of it, you are immersed. There's not one part of your body that's not experiencing the atmosphere, because if it was, it would die, you know. Take a breath, and every cell in your body lives on that oxygen and whatever, you know, all of the chemical stuff. Okay, so that's just, I like that as a context, because, you know, if you know, we have, for example, Nagarjuna's analysis of, you know, is the chariot, the wheel, is the chariot, the door, this, that. Okay, that's, you know, that's good, but we have a body and we have an education. I'll go back to Geshe Hawan Darge in 1972 or 3 or something like that. He was quite critical that we would never understand the voidness. Now, I don't disagree that maybe the really subtle components of voidness we might not get. But the general sense of voidness is not difficult for us as Westerners. We're well educated. You know, the Tibetans, unless you went to a monastery, you did not have public education in Tibet. You know, maybe your aunt or uncle taught you how to read and write, maybe, and a few other things. If you got an education, you went to the monastery and then you got an education, but then, you know, very much a religious one. But all of us have at least 12 years of school, let alone 15 or 18 years we went to college, university. We're well educated. Okay, then this is really interesting, and I only thought I started realizing this, you know, when I started to look at it a little bit. The 4 schools of philosophy, because we're assuming you're all Gelugpa, or anyway, at least understand 4 schools: Vaibhasika, Svatantrika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamika. Okay, do you realize that I would say almost all the educated West is Vaibhasika and Svatantrika? Why? Because those 2 philosophies, what is the phenomenal universe? Okay, so remember, there's personality and phenomena. These are the 2 breakdowns of investigating reality. Okay, there's your phenomena, which is all the things in the world and your body. And then there's, let's say, personality or mind, which is the other one. And those are the two things you analyze when you investigate reality. And did you know that actually for the Bodhisattva vehicle, you should analyze phenomena first to have a better understanding of interdependence and non-self existence before you apply it to your sense of self. It's a more conducive way for having bodhicitta. Okay, but coming back to the thing is that all of us, we're well educated. We all know about atoms and molecules, and we all know about air. And I mean, the oxygen around us is, I don't know, whatever it is, it's this, and then there's nitrogen, and then there's like carbon, and I mean, all the other things, you know. Well, we all know that. We don't apply it, but we all know that. So we all have a Vaibhasika or Sautrantika view of the universe. It's all just atoms vibrating. You never thought about it. You check, I mean, if you don't get into the little details about does time exist or not exist and things like that, just the basic philosophy of a Vaibhasika or Sautrantika is that the physical universe is nothing but vibrating atoms. Now, they say those atoms are the ultimate truth, that an atom is a private thing. But we know a little better. We know that there's only potentiality of where the electrons and protons and neutrons are, you know. I mean, and that's quantum mechanics and all of that. So the thing is, but still, you're sitting in that room, you know, it's just full of vibrating atoms and molecules and electrons and whatever else, you know, and that's what makes it up, having, you know, the atmosphere having a certain quality, your body, all those things. So even though we never take the consequences of that, we are Vaibhasikas and Sautantrikas. The only difference between a Vaibhasika and a Sautantrika is that the Sautantrikas said you can label, that there's the mind to label, or you can labeling things. So the basic Vaibhasika is that the physical universe in your body is nothing but a dynamic of atomic movement. Okay? Then the mind is the shortest mind moments. And both of those philosophies have that sort of idea of the nature of reality. But just in regards to the phenomenal universe, we all have a basic understanding of that. It's just part of how we were educated. So really interesting. I bet you never thought about it, did you? Okay, so we're sitting in a room, we're completely surrounded by atmosphere, move your hands and your arms, and you say, okay, whoa, I'm not independently existent, you know? Take a breath. I'm not independently existent. I am completely penetrated, even to the cellular level of my body. I have no independent self-existence. Okay, so that gets the beneficial thing of that, and this comes back to the Bodhisattva view, is that you build up a really substantial basis of interdependence. And if we take Nagarjuna's keynote, he said, you know, the king or queen of all philosophies is interdependence. You know, and that's really, really important. And then, of course, what you have is you might say, well, okay, let's say you say, well, my body is independent. Well, no, it's interdependent. Atmosphere, breathing. And then you can say, okay, well, the air that came in my lungs is independent. No, because it's going to get transferred to the blood, and it's going to do this and that, and it gets transferred to the cells, and then it turns into something else. You know, we all are fairly knowledgeable about chemistry and those sorts of things. So the understanding of voidness isn't that far away from us. Just we never applied it. Didn't look at the consequences. But it's really good. So Om Sobo Shudo Sarva Dharma Sobo Shudo Hum. Lama Yeshe said that just reciting that mantra, if you have a little bit of understanding, should give you peace. I like to think of it as like it says, all the universe is pure and so am I. Om Sobo Shudo Sarva Dharma. Om is the integration of body, speech, and mind. Sobowa, nature. Shuddha, pure. Sarva Dharma, all the phenomena. Sobowa Shuddho, hum, nature, pure, I. All the universe is pure, and so am I. Okay, so that's the basis for then being able to generate yourself as Maitreya Buddha. But now let's just sort of talk about this a little bit, because this is really important. That if strictly speaking, you cannot generate yourself as Maitreya Buddha unless you have an Anuttara Yoga initiation. That is, Kala Chakra, Heruka, Yamantaka, Guya Samaja, any of those. Dalai Lama said that to me once, that he says, nobody can do complete transformation. Now, why? Because when you receive an Anantara Yoga initiation, you are introduced to your Dharmakaya, which is your Buddha nature. And actually, Geshe Dargay said it's your voidness. He said, voidness, Buddha nature, and Dharmakaya are all synonyms. Okay? But coming back to the point is that you are introduced to that's where you're coming from. And then from that, then you come Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. Okay? So the example that I think really works appropriately is, for example, let's take Losang. So Losang, I'm assuming you're American, okay? So you say, yes, I'm American. I identify I'm American, Maybe I'm happy with that, maybe I'm not, but the thing is, you're an American, okay? But someone comes along and says, no, look, Losang, I'm sorry, here's your birth certificate. You were born in Canada. You're a Canadian. And you go like, oh, really? Wow, okay, well, And so suddenly there's this sort of like shift of identification, And that's what happens in the practice of Anantara Yoga Tantra. That we say you drop your mundane sense of self. Well, put that in realistic terms. Your mundane sense of self feels it's self-existent, that it has certain qualities, it's this and that. But when you talk in Tantra, you say, I abandon my mundane sense of self. Well, what you do is you shift over your identification to Dharmakaya. I am coming from Dharmakaya. I, Losang, am no longer an American. I'm actually a Canadian, and I get free healthcare. Okay, and all sorts of benefits. Wow, that's sort of the equivalent. And I'm not trying to say that America doesn't have good qualities. Please forgive me. I'm just joking, but I needed to have some example. And we're neighbors, and I'm a Canadian. Okay, so in Canada, you get free healthcare. I had open heart surgery. It didn't cost me a penny. And things like that. So anyway, having that you're introduced to your Dharmakaya is equivalent to sort of the happiness you'd have, and suddenly I have free healthcare and all the other benefits and perks that might go with that. That's sort of equivalent to it in a way that it really means is that I feel good. Yes. So I had to use a mundane example to get you to have a feeling about coming from Dharmakaya. Now, again, if we follow the strict teachings, you cannot become a Buddha image. You cannot create yourself as a deity without an Anantara Yoga initiation. Now, you can, anyway, let's not get too complicated about it, but we can just sort of do it generally, that we do have we do have clear light consciousness, we do have Buddha nature, and that is completely pure, unsullied. It's the most subtle, profound nature of our mind. And so, although maybe we don't have Anantara Yoga initiations, unless you do, then you could say, okay, I'm coming from that. So when I say, Om Sobo Shuddha Sarvadharma Sobo Shuddha Hum, which is all the nature is pure and so am I, all the nature is pure of independent self-existence and so am I, that statement, that then maybe comes back to what Geshe Dargay said, is that Dharmakaya, Buddha nature, and sunyata are synonyms. So that you just say, okay, not one iota of me, not one atom of me has independent self-existence. Take a breath, I'm immersed in the atmosphere, I'm penetrated by the atmosphere, every cell of my body needs that atmosphere, I have no independent self-existence, okay? And then you just let everything evaporate. It's like everything disappears, everything evaporates. That's the I and all phenomena are empty of self-existence, non-dual. Now, another component of, for example, non-duality. Non-duality, strictly speaking, is only a high meditative experience. The example, okay, again, we'll come back to, if you're looking at the relative universe, relative perspective on the nature of reality, all phenomena are interdependent. So I'm sitting in this room, there's the atmosphere, there's the walls, there's the temperature of the room based on whether I have a heating system or whether it's just the air from outside. Everything is open, interdependent, relative perspective. Phenomena are appearing. If you move to the ultimate perspective of reality, all the phenomena are equal, or as Milarepa said, of one taste. The one taste of all phenomena is empty of self-existence. So you're focused on the nature. That's the important thing. In relative perspective, phenomena appear, but you understand them. But when you focus on just their nature, then it's like everything became the color white. How can something be more white than something else? It's not possible. So the ultimate perspective is, I am focused on a nature. All phenomena are completely equally interdependent, empty of any self-existence. And when I rest in that, then I'm open like the space of the sky. That's the analogy. Okay, so ultimate perspective on a nature reality, the whole universe is open, empty of any self-existence. No forms appear because they all are of one taste. They're all white. How could something be more white than something else? It's all just white. So that's the ultimate perspective. But when I allow the relative perspective to arise, phenomena appear, but I understand them in their nature as being appearing interdependently. Okay, now coming back to the ultimate perspective, the analogy I like to do, and again, these are things that just, I think if I talk to some of my friends, you know, that have been around for 10 or 20 or 30 years, we all have sort of similar ideas. It's like, if I say that sitting in this room, I have a trouble because it's sort of like there's a floor underneath me, there's planet Earth and this and that. And you want this sense of being completely open. So I like to be at 30,000 feet in the space of the sky, just as an analogy. Okay. And so, Om Sabhavashudo, Sarva, Dharma, Sabhavashudo, Hum, all these relative phenomena that are of one taste, interdependent, evaporate, and I'm at 30,000 feet in the face of the sky. I'm an open space of the sky. But this is where the non-duality comes in. So normally you are looking at space of sky. What you try to do is become non-dualistic with it. I am open space of the sky. And I try to stay there. That's Om Sabhavashudo, Sarva Sabhavashudo. And as it takes the I and all phenomena are empty of self-existence. So, and then actually Lama Yeshe's next thing, in the empty space of non-duality. Okay, so right there you have the perfect thing. That. Okay, now, again, it's so good to study, you know, it just makes you so much more intelligent. So, did you ever think about it? Like, we talk about space, and, you know, we often say space, the sky. That's not actually the real object. Space is what's called a it's a non-obstruction. So if this was planet Earth and it's moving around the sun, it's not like space got out of the way, you know, went around the planet Earth and then got back together to be space again. Space is non-obstruction. It's not a something. It's merely a mental label. Okay. Now, if you talk about the nature of reality, remember, the form here is only emptiness, emptiness is only form, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness, form. Feeling, thought, and choice, consciousness itself are the same as this, all are primal, empty, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's your heart sutra. That voidness is not a something, and phenomena are not different than voidness. Form here is only emptiness, emptiness is only form, form is no other than emptiness, no other than form. Feeling, thought, and choice. Okay, so if you understand space isn't a something that gets out of the way of planet Earth as it's moving around the sun. Space is just non-obstruction. So you get a little bit of that. And then you say, I am open like, okay, space of the sky. It's an analogy. Okay. It's not a something. It's just openness, non-obstruction, like space. Okay. And that's interesting. That's a huge meditation, you know. I mean, but that's where you come from when you become Maitreya Buddha. Like as he says, in the space of non-duality, non-conceptualization, your consciousness manifests as a fresh. Okay, then it goes into manifestation. So if we're following Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, that then Dharmakaya, which has a synonym of Buddha nature, which is a synonym of sunyata or voidness. They're all synonyms, yeah. That, okay, from that understanding, then I will start to manifest. And so you could say you're taking control of how you're going to appear. So you've just been introduced that you are actually a Canadian citizen. And again, analogy, please forgive me if you are very devotional with a particular country. Okay, doesn't matter. So this, okay, like, oh, I actually no longer, so for example, I'm Tom in Canada. I know you're from Sweden. Okay, so try to sort of to adjust it. So you say, oh, okay, so I have this other identification. I no longer am identifying with my mundane self. I have this other identification, Dharmakaya, some sunyata, Buddha nature, the most subtle nature of my mind, my clear light. That's a new place I'm coming from. So you rest in that. Then, in that, as Lama Yeshe's text says, then comes my mind manifests as a fresh new lotus flower in the center of which the wisdom manifestation has a full moon disk. Okay. Now, everything has meaning. Okay, so we're at 12:10. We have 45 more minutes. Okay, so we're not exhausting you all. I can't see what's happening on the screen. So if something happens with our Zoom group, you have to interrupt me. Okay, but coming back to the teachings, then there we go. Okay, so your open space of the sky. There's no shape, just open space of the sky, and you try to be that. That's non-dualistic. Okay, then you become lotus and moon cushion. Now, everything. What's really, really important with the practice of deities is it's a personification of the graduated path. The practice of Tantra has nothing to do outside of the graduated path to enlightenment. It just personifies it. Okay? So, if, for example, you take a lotus, I mean, again, most of you are educated, you know about it. The lotus, why is the lotus picked? Because it needs its roots in the quagmire of samsara. And from being nurtured by the quagmire of samsara, then the stem of the lotus starts coming up and finally blossoms above the swamp in its beauty, free, but it needs the quagmire. It doesn't have the quagmire. What's that mean? It comes back to being a bodhisattva. You work on your delusions. You have to work on them. You have to deal with them. You have to dialogue with them. Or as Trungpa Rinpoche, said, he said it so well. He said, you take the shit of your existence and you turn it into fertilizer. Okay, what's the shit of our existence? It's the fact that we have delusions. We get angry. We have resentment. We get pissed off. We have attachment and desire. All those things. That's the quagmire. That's the goopy, funky stuff that's sort of there. But that's where bodhicitta gets its nourishment. And you start off with first your own, like, may I bring my, delusional attachment to enlightenment? Hey, enlightenment, how are you doing? Hey, you're not really that beneficial for me. I'd like to become more enlightened. Even if I did pursue you, as I think as Venerable Rabina says, chasing desire, doesn't solve the problem. In fact, it ends with more desire. Okay, so I dialogue with it. I don't reject it. You could say, I love you, desire, because I want you to be happy. The definition of love, male sentient means of happiness. I feel for you because you want happiness, but you're doing all the wrong things for it. Compassion, definition of compassion, may you be free of your suffering. So you do that first with your desire, with your anger, with your jealousy, or with your low self-esteem. Sometimes we always pick the aggressive delusions. Low self-esteem is very debilitating. It needs to be brought to enlightenment. You need to love your low self-esteem. Bring it into enlightenment. Okay, so the lotus needs the quagmire, and that's how it's going to be really strong in its stem, and then finally in the beautiful lotus it manifests. So all Buddhas sit on a lotus because the lotus is the foundation of their spiritual determination. And again, if we talk about words, it's really important words. Renunciation only marginally applies to what the Buddhist term really is. It's nejum, arising, or I mean, Glenn Mullen has a term for it. Alex Berzin has a term for it. And I like spiritual determination. I think it's an Alex Berzin sort of version. But it has nothing to do with I'm letting go. And these things are important. You know, you guys have to think. I mean, you're intelligent, you're well educated. Okay, what's renunciation? I renounce my cell phone. I put it behind me. Okay, well, what your view is looking backwards. I renounce that. And that's the object. What's the Buddhist word? Nei chung. Chung is to come forth, to move forward. And so if you did move forward, yes, you might leave your cell phone behind. But the thing is, you didn't focus on that. It wasn't focused on, I renounce my cell phone. I renounce my money. I renounce my car. That's a backward-looking view. This is psychology. This is very important Buddhism. So Buddhism is so important that way. Lama Yeshe has said, if you're a good Buddhist meditator, you're a good psychologist. So look at the way you think about things. Okay, do you abandon something like I renounced it, or do you move past it? So you're not focused on it, you're going somewhere with yourself, and that thing no longer applies. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a bit intense there. But the thing is, it's really, I mean, I get really, let's see, my reason for that is vocabulary. If you do the School of Dialectics, Lorik and such from that with Tibetan, it becomes dialectics is so important, how you say something. You know, so the term would be Fat George doesn't eat at nighttime. Oh, sorry, Fat George doesn't eat in the daytime. So what it is, that implies Fat George eats at nighttime. That's the recognizing the word, the implication of the word. So renunciation isn't a good Buddhist term. Now, it applies in some situations, totally, I absolutely agree with that. But 99% of the time, no, it's spiritual determination. I'm going somewhere. And that really, really is important. That's an effect on your psychology. It's like, I abandoned this, I abandoned that, I renounced it, I don't do that anymore, you know? But so poor you know? Whereas, no, I had a determination, I was going to go to enlightenment. So I stopped drinking. But no, I'm going to enlightenment. That's where the focus was. It didn't imply some poor you that can't get drunk anymore, or drink or whatever be the case. Okay, so important the terminology, which I think in the next 20 to 30 years will start to finally gain its proper place. We're still living under actually the Jesuit monks who went to Tibet and created Chandra Das's dictionary. You know, I mean, I have a Chandra Das dictionary, and I'd say most of it is Christianity trying to be interpreted on Buddhist terms. I mean, and even then, I mean, if, for example, if you're young enough, study Tibetan, it's really juicy. You know, I mean, we say Buddha, doesn't it? Like Sangye, Sang is purified, Ge is increased, you know. Nejum, arising from, okay, or arising. Anyway, spiritual determination. You know, the words are, the whole language of Tibet is totally spiritually based, okay, on giving realizations. Because actually we're doing okay, you know. So we're still talking about home. So I'm going to share something with you which sort of applies. It works in the Tibetan, sort of works in English. Okay, that if you take and you're going to say anything, okay, it's broken into syllables. Okay, so you take say my name Jhampa, or take house. It's not. Let's take a 2-syllable word. Floor. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, so you have syllables. Let's make up words. Okay. So now, if you take any syllable, you need to have a consonant and a vowel. If you just had a consonant, it can't make a sound. It has to be mixed with a vowel. So, the example, let's say A has A-E, and B is B-I. Okay, you can't do both. You know, I mean, you need a vowel in there to give a consonant the ability to personify itself, to express itself. And then that creates a syllable. And then for my name again, Jhampa, 2 syllables, Jhampa. Okay, Jhampa. Okay, I can't say the jump without having some vowels in there. Okay, so in the Tibetan language, the way it works is this, that the root of all vowels is the syllable ah. Okay, just ah. And on the ah in the Tibetan language, you put e, u, o. Yeah, there's 5. A, E, O, U. Okay. So the thing is, that's how that's how you create the vowel sound. So the root of all vowels is ah. On the ah, then you can get the other sounds O, U, E, A. Sorry, there's hiccup. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then you put that together with a consonant, and then you get the way to pronounce it. So, I mean, for example, Tibetan ka, ka, ga, na, cha, 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 na, like that. Okay. So you can't that. So that means that the root of all the phenomena you're looking at and labeling is ah. You should see ah in all phenomena. That's equivalent to understanding the nature of reality. You have the root of all phenomena, interdependent, empty of self-existence. That's ah, and then you can then create that, then you put a vowel to it and you mix it with a consonant, then you can have wall, floor, ceiling, computer, 3 syllables. Okay, anyway, so the point is very interesting, yeah? So it's good to study. It makes your life more interesting. So, Sobo Ashuto, Savarnama, Sobo Ashuto Hum, everything, total the universe is pure and so am I. So total the universe is pure as phenomena, and so am I is sense of self. Okay? And on that note, actually, there's still some more stuff. I mean, there's lots of fun stuff to share. I think that we had a Geshe come here from Spain, and I'm in Mexico, yeah. So he spoke Spanish quite well. And his big thing was analysis of ego. And he says, and ego does not exist, ego this, ego that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, self is a better word to use. It's been a doc or but anyway, I think that the even better word for us as Westerners is sense of self. Now, what you have is things that are interdependent that created your self, sense of self. So depending on how I slept last night, depending on the breakfast I had this morning, my sense of self feels pretty good, or my sense of self doesn't feel so good. And so that word can be applicable because we would not be able to say, oh, the Buddha has a beautiful ego. I mean, I think most of us would vomit if we tried to say that, it just, But we could say the Buddha has a sense of self that's enlightened. I have a sense of self which is mixed with my delusions. So you get the ability to move from mundane sentient existence or confused existence, samsara, to enlightenment without having to lose to say egolessness. I mean, again, it's such a horrible translation for Buddhism. Not self-existent would be the correct way to say it. There's no egoism. It's not like your sense of self became nothing. There's a video with Lama Yeshe, which is just great. And somebody in one of these YouTube videos, he says, "Tell me, Lama, does he said, does the Buddhas have personality?" And Lama laughed and laughed. He says, "Huge ones." He laughed and laughed and laughed about it. I mean, Lama Yeshe was a very, very dynamic personality, but you could say a very enlightened personality. His sense of self was very enlightened. And so, for us, we have our sense of self, which is mixed with our delusions. And if we become a Buddha, we have a sense of self, which has wisdom. And then we could be a sense of self. We say the Buddha's sense of self is wisdom and compassion. Okay, I'm talking again about the thing that I got all excited about is vocabulary. And I think in the long run, we have a little bit more to go to come up with better vocabulary. But we're still in their thing. We're still talking about Sobo Ashuto Sarvanama, Sobo Ashuto Hum, I and all phenomena are empty of self-existence. And we talked about here, we got about from the voidness, became a lotus with the moon disk. Actually, this is on a precious throne. The 8 lions represent fearlessness. I mean, if you're sitting on a platform and there was 8 lions around you, you'd be pretty nervous. Okay, so no fear. Okay, that's sitting on a throne with lions underneath you. Lotus, I just described it. It's like the ability that you nurtured yourself off of your samsara. You didn't pull yourself out of samsara. Again, transcendence. I don't think that's the right word. You don't transcend things. That means you go away from them. You could say you transform them, you know. Again, so they just it's the vocabulary needs some work, I think, but point is interesting. So the lotus didn't pull itself out of its roots and then still be able to be a lotus. No, it had to nurture itself off the quagmire of samsara, and then it became a beautiful lotus with incredible strength, the strength of compassion. And that's where I take this Holiness of Dalai Lama. You know, he said it this way. He's when they first came out of Tibet, every day, if not every second day, Tibetans arrive from Tibet and would sit there and they go to the God King of Tibet, their savior, and burst into tears and sob piteously in front of him, saying, please, please, you know, my wife was killed, my daughter was raped, they took my property, they killed my family, they took all my animals away, they've taken our country, they destroyed the monastery. And it wasn't like for a week, for 25 years. Maybe, you know, after some time they sort of made it a little bit less, but every day, could you handle that? And you're the God King of Tibet? That's intense. And so, I mean, you must have cried. I mean, His Holiness must have cried or wanted to cry. I mean, because these people were looking at him as a salvation, as a solution. That's so painful. But as the Dalai Lama said, the pain of my compassion was much better than the pain of my anger. And so, even if we do become deeply compassionate, or if we do sort of have to deal with life that's very violent, our compassion is a much better place to be than compared to other emotions. And so that's what the Dalai Lama said. He said, if I looked at all the things that I had to experience, my compassion was the best place I could be. I have compassion for the Tibetans. I have compassion for the Chinese because they didn't understand what they were doing and they just destroyed something that was beautiful. And I have compassion for them. It's something a little hard for us to understand, but it's there. So that's the lotus. And so you see what I mean? Like, if you don't nurture yourself off of samsara, the stem of your lotus is weak. And then the lotus isn't very healthy. If you can nurture yourself off samsara, and I don't mean go off and live samsara, you know, and think, wow, yes, I'm nurturing my lotus. No, you know, but deal effectively, dialogue with your delusions. Okay. So there's your lotus. Now the moon, okay, because this all represents enlightenment. So you have spiritual determination. I nurtured myself. That's the lotus. In that, you have a moon. Now, the moon has two things. It is basically, you could say, it's a sign of wisdom and it's a sign of compassion. Now, often there's a sun and a moon, but if there's just the moon, it still works. Why? Okay, the light of the moon only arises because of its interdependence with the sun. So therefore, the moon on the lotus represents interdependence, which represents that nothing is independently self-existent, which represents the voidness or sunyata. So the moon only shines because of interdependence, and so therefore represents wisdom. And then the second component is, just as if, for example, you stepped outside and it was a very sunny day, the sun, the light of the sun on your skin is hot. But if you stepped out on a full moon night, the light of the moon on your skin is cool. And that's the coolness of compassion. So all Buddhas sit on a sun or moon, or just the moon in this case, and it represents they sit on wisdom and compassion, that they are fully interdependent and they are cool. As in the sense of not hot with the delusions and such like that. So all Buddhists sit in that, so that's the thing. And my mind manifests as a seed syllable, hum or mem. Okay, now we're on page 2 of the Sadhana, and in this case, Lama Yeshe included mem, and that they put the little Tibetan symbol there for you, which is actually a little bit nicer than the English. But hum is the more traditional one. So anyway, hum represents your mind. So it manifests. Now at this point, you've manifested. Okay, in fact, you're manifesting a bunch of things, but you have to think of it, okay, I was at 30,000 feet in the open space of the sky, and I was that open space of the sky. And remember, I was non-obstruction, like space, non-obstruction. It's not a something. Form here is only images, and this is only form is only images, and form feeling, thought, and transconscious. Okay, so open, not any inherent self-existence, most subtle mind, my Dharmakaya, my Buddha nature, my clear light consciousness, sunyata. That was the without form. Then within that, then you allowed, well, you should actually allow a beautiful park, a pure land to appear. So just make it a beautiful park. And on top of that, then there's a beautiful like throne, very large, with 8 lions underneath it. Well, it's pretty big. Well, it's pretty like dynamic. And then on top of that, then you have a lotus, and then you have a moon cushion. And so that's where you're sitting. And the lotus has 8 petals, just in case you're curious. So you're sitting on that, and then sitting on that. So that's sort of like you could say that's the manifested realm. But then it's your Sambhogakaya, your subtle body. And that is whom or mem, as you wish. Let's just say whom. I'll always say whom now. So that then is my most subtle mind. And now that most subtle mind is, it's synonymous with the Sambhogakaya, 32 major and 80 minor marks of a Buddha. But in this case, it's a syllable. And it's vibrating with that sound. So whether it's whom or whether it's mem, okay, so it's got that vibration. So it's like a neon light. So again, we have wonderful things in Western society. We have neon. So a neon light syllable, whom, in space vibrating. And it's vibrating love and compassion. I really like to emphasize that, if you were a Buddha, you have Dharmakaya. And Dharmakaya is called self-liberation. That's your personal peace. It's your personal nirvana. But because you have empathy, because of thousands of rebirths, and because of sentient beings and your sense of them, that you manifest compassion. The Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya are only compassion. They're bodhicitta, the having worked on things to become enlightened. So they are your bodhicitta, they are your compassion. So the syllable whom or the syllable mum is radiating the sound of compassion. May all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness and love. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and cause of suffering. So you just rest in that. And that's really, really good to do that, just to rest in I am, okay, if you be a bit intellectual, okay, I have a foundation of my spiritual determination. I have some wisdom and compassion. That's the moon cushion. And I am manifesting. I only manifest for the benefit of sentient beings because I have my personal liberation. I have Dharmakaya. I have clear light consciousness. I have my personal liberation. In that, I'm free. But I'm going to let myself manifest. But you only manifest for compassion. You don't have any other reason to manifest. You don't want to go off and get a Starbucks or something like that. No, you just manifest for compassion. So you rest in that. I am whom. I'm floating above the thing, and I am completely full of compassion. And so you rest in that. Okay. Now, bright golden light the size of a sesame seed. So it's really tiny. Okay, I'm going to stop for a little while and you guys ask questions because I'm getting a sore throat. And I think, hey, you guys have to have some questions by now. Damn it, I gave you lots of information. Don't be shy. So I just opened it up. So, okay, so we got to we're a little syllable floating in space. Da 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 da. Ask questions, please. Or maybe I'll just make you meditate. Easy way out for me. Well, there's Nicholas and Jonah. Okay. And then there's GH, and there's Lily. Hi, Lily. Lily's from El Paso, I think. And Mark and DDB. I don't know. Jake. I don't know. John is from Florida. Karen. Tom Brown. Come on, somebody ask. Oh, there. Okay, DDB asked a question. Please turn on your mic.
You'll need to unmute.
Oh, there we are. Hello, Jhampa.
Hello.
Yes, I wanted to ask. So, if the moon represents wisdom, what does the sun represent?
Well, okay. The moon. Okay, depends on what you have on the lotus. If it's just the moon, it represents both wisdom and compassion. If you have a sun and a moon, the sun represents the wisdom and the moon represents the compassion, generally speaking. You can get other commentaries that say it other way around, but generally speaking, sun is seen as the bright light of the sun is sort of like burns all the delusions, so it's wisdom. And then the moon is soft light, so it's compassion. So this depends on the visualization. Moon can represent both. The sun generally represents wisdom and the moon represents compassion. If those are the two that are on the moon, you never have just a sun disk, though. You always have the underneath the sun disk is the moon cushion, if it does mention a sun cushion. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up.
Hmm? Any other questions or thoughts? Come on, guys. Well, let me think. Things to talk about. Okay, John Edwards, which is John from Florida. What's the question?
Hi, Jhampa. I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to comment on when you talked about using spiritual determination instead of renunciation. I thought that was a really, really interesting thing because the people that I engage with about Buddhism, they always kind of have this preconceived notion that's typically very, Hinayana in focus. And I had never thought of articulating it in that way. And I just thought that was very helpful. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And then also, whenever I think about the Tibetan experience with the Chinese, I think about Garchen Rinpoche, and he had written this blurb that's really stuck with me. And he was in prison for 20 years or whatever, and he said that when he was in prison, he had come into contact with a very good spiritual teacher, and the teacher had helped him transform the prison into a pure land essentially. And I always thought that was really interesting, the fact that you could be really anywhere, even in horrible conditions, and with boundless compassion, even for your enemies, you can still really achieve something special. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah, there's a video. The Yogis of Tibet. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, but it was it was a movie that was made 20 years ago. And in that, the Dalai Lama was doing an interview with the monk, and the monk had been in prison for a long time. Maybe it was Garchen Rinpoche, I don't know. And the Dalai Lama asked him. He says, "What was your most fearful moment during your time in prison?" And the monk said, "When I thought I would lose compassion for the Chinese." And I thought, whoa, that's pretty powerful, that was his thing. And so it's like, wow, I mean, it's really, yeah, I mean, it's, I guess you might almost say that like the Tibetans with all of their, Buddhism and all of this, and, and I mean, you will never give up the Dharma for even at the cost of your life. Well, I'd say 95% of us would never have that issue, whereas with the Tibetans, they did. I mean, you either had to, say that you didn't believe in the Dalai Lama or whatever, or else they killed you. I mean, wow. So I guess in one way, maybe there was some funny karma that was created there. I'm not sure, but anyway, whatever the case, compassion. It's even being tortured and still have compassion. It's like incredibly powerful. Okay, so. Okay, good. We had a chance to rest, so thank you. I appreciate it, if nothing else. Okay, so we are a seed syllable whom, and we're resting, and we manifested out of compassion. Now, I have people that have problems with that because they say, look, there's some really nasty people in the world and things like that. How can this be? And you have to think about it. I'll share some personal story. Here in Mexico, we do have the narcos and we have the cartels and we have a lot of violence. And I sometimes get caught up with thinking like, gee, I wish those people would, those horrible narcos who do really god awful things to other people, maybe they'll die. And so one time, this is quite a few years ago, but I think it was probably 8 years ago, we had a lot of violence in our city. And I used to have a gun. I was younger in Canada, and I was quite a good shot with it. So I sort of allowed my imagination to go like, oh, okay, yes, I have my gun and I'm like a sniper or something like that, and oh, there's that bad narco over there, shoot him. And oh, there's another bad narco, shoot him, Just really silly thoughts, yeah. But I was really disheartened by the violence that I saw. And I don't want to go into it because some of it's really horrendous. But, and then at a certain point I realized, oh, Jhampa, yeah, you could shoot 2 or 3 of them and then they'd start looking for you. And then it wouldn't be any more fun anymore, and it's not like Jhampa can run around doing this. And I thought, okay, ridiculous. It doesn't solve the problem. And so I had to sort of resign myself and say, really, I had to resign myself to saying, okay, well, where do I want to rest if I'm going to rest in the situation of people like that with violence? Where can I be at peace with it? And it was compassion to say, well, may I be compassionate to these guys? And maybe, in amongst their violence at one point, they maybe wonder if they're really happy. Then maybe if they bumped into me because I have compassion to them, I'm nice to them, I'm friendly to them, they might say, hey, Jhampa, what's going on with my life? And I might have a chance to transform them, to change them. So actually, even incredibly obnoxious people or people as bad as narcos or whatever, very, very violent people, sociopaths or whatever, doesn't mean you have to invite them in your life, but have compassion for them. Be friendly to them not like I say, invite them in your life, but be friendly so that if they did show up at your doorstep one day, you would have been friendly and they might have remembered that. And then you might have a chance to say something to them that changes them. We're not the Buddha, we're not some incredibly charismatic individual who can accomplish it, but we can at least be that, and which is a very authentic friendliness in not making yourself vulnerable, but just friendliness that if ever the opportunity came, I could help, the Chinese persecutors of Tibet. I could help the narcos, or I could help the people in Chicago who do really violent things to other people in Chicago or something like that. Okay, so that's just the idea that I am just compassion. You rest in that. It's very good, it's really powerful. Okay, and don't have doubts about it. Now, being compassionate doesn't mean you have to do something. Actually, good. Because I still have like 15 minutes. I have a good story for you because we're talking about compassion. We've manifested whom or mem. Okay, about 10 years ago, I have a consulting business, and one of my people that I consult with in Florida, she got in touch with me, and we had some conversations, and she said, Jhampa, she's retired. She says, Jhampa, I'm so lucky, I retired. So I took my bedroom and I took my walk-in closet and I took all the clothes out of my walk-in closet and I made it my altar room. And I could go in there and I could shut the door and it was really nice and secure and I would meditate. And I started meditating 3 and 4 and 5 hours a day. It was wonderful. I was in bliss. And then during the other time of the day, I would do my other things. So she said, I've been working in a safe house for women. And I was a volunteer there and I was sort of helping them with this and that. But I said, after about 5 or 6 months of my meditation being 3 or 4 hours and things like that, I found it was very uncomfortable to go to this safe house, because just suffering and the violence that was perpetrated against women and things, it was difficult. So I had to stop going there. I had to stop volunteering because it was just too much for me, But then I continued my meditation 4 or 5 hours a day, this and that. And then I found that I got very sensitive. And if I went to a grocery store in the middle of the day when there was a lot of people and there was intensity and people going after this and there's a time limit and this and that, he said it started to bother me. I couldn't handle it. So I had to go to the grocery store at like 8 in the morning when it just opened because there'd be nobody in the aisles and then I could buy my groceries. So he says, that's what happened, and as I continued to meditate, then one day I stepped out into our patio and I twisted my ankle and fell down. And so my husband took me and put me in the car and he drove me to the hospital. And I couldn't take it. I said, the hospital is full of all these suffering people. And I was so sensitive with all my meditation, Jhampa, it's just, I can't do it. I'm obviously there's something really wrong. And so, okay, well, so sure. So she actually left the hospital, but luckily her ankle wasn't too bad, so she healed. Okay, so I explained it to her this way. I said, what's happened is, it's like if you take a road bump or a speed bump, like if you're driving along in your car, and if you hit the speed bump, you start to go up. Well, what I said is like that's like suffering. Like you're aware of the suffering of these women, which is actually pretty intense, or just the all of the crazy energy in a store with people running around and time limits. So what you're doing is you're hitting a speed bump of that, and you're rolling a little bit up it, but then you're rolling backwards. You're not going over it. And so what's happened is fear or dislike or displeasure with seeing suffering. And so your problem is that you're not going over. And that comes back to the Dalai Lama, where, we said the Dalai Lama says, if I had to live somewhere, I'd rather live with the pain of my compassion for others than anything else. And so I explained to her, I said, what you need to do is to do something. Like, and now this is really important. This is the most important point. You don't have to be the Mother Teresa or, Florence Nightingale of the world, but you need to do something that takes you over the speed bump. And what it is that, so for example, it can be just a prayer. So we're Buddhists, Om Mani Padme Hum. So let's say you see some really horrendous thing happening. Maybe a dog got hit by a car or something like that. And it's really thinking, you don't have time to stop because of just the way life is, But say Om Mani Padme Hum. Rather than saying, I don't want to see that. I didn't see that. No, I'm going to keep driving. And then you feel guilty because you didn't do anything for that poor dog. And then, all these emotional things. And like, God, I'm not even a bodhisattva anymore. No. Do that, That's something. That's going over the speed bump. Maybe it's not stopping the car and getting out and trying to help the dog that's been hit by a car, but it was something. It was compassion. Maybe you say more prayers. Maybe you have a Tara prayer, or for dying animals, it's the mantra of Milarepa or whatever. That's one thing. Okay, so you've done something. That's the point. That's going over the speed bump. So we don't need to be Mother Teresa or Florence Nightingale, but we need to at least do something that puts us on the other side of having bumped into suffering, pain, and such. The other thing I'd always recommend is that we don't need to watch all the news all the day. I mean, you get inundated with just how much horrible stuff goes on in the world. You'll destroy yourself. So don't watch the news so much, or only watch nicer news. And it's not like you're avoiding, it's just you're being intelligent. You can't be overwhelmed. If you get overwhelmed, you'll lose your practice. Okay, so in regards to whether you do, let's just say you hit the speed bump of a suffering situation. So whether you just do a Mani Padme Hum, or whether then you offer a hug to somebody, you offer some words, you do something, that's compassion. And that thing, again, you don't need to volunteer yourself. I mean, on this altar of martyrdom or something, but you could just at least do something. That's really, really good. So in regards to compassion, like we're talking about it now, you became mum or whom or mem. And so you rest in that. I am compassion. May I be of benefit to all sentient beings. Now, one thing that's part of this also, if you come back to the analogy I gave you of I'm in a room full of atmosphere. I'm completely immersed. There's not a space in this room which doesn't have some atmosphere in it. Otherwise, I couldn't breathe. Okay, so I'm sitting in this room. I am immersed. I am interdependent. So it's really good. I mean, just breathing meditation with that consciousness, and I'm interdependent with everything. But anyway, in this case, just you establish a good foundation with the phenomena, air, your body, phenomena, and they are interdependent. And then completely, there's not one part of my body that doesn't have some air, atmosphere around it. Then you inhale, and then you say, okay, I'm completely penetrated. Every cell of my body, even my skin is breathing. And my skin is an organ. So, I mean, we're well educated. We know these things. I mean, go on YouTube and you'll find out, or Dr. Google or something, lots of information there. So I am like a sponge immersed deep in the ocean, completely penetrated, completely surrounded, completely immersed. I'm breathing, okay. So that's like that's the relative perspective on the nature of reality where phenomena are still appearing, but they're understood as being interdependent. Now, in the meditation, we then completely evaporated everything because it's all of one taste. It's all equally interdependent. Nothing is a little more self-existent than another phenomena. They're all equal, one taste. Then I just allowed the open space of the sky to arrive. Okay. And I rested in that. That's my personal nirvana. That's my Buddha nature, my clear light consciousness, my most subtle mind. Okay. And then of course, you allowed a location to manifest. So that was good. And within that manifested location, then you have a lotus or the throne, lotus and moon. And then you are the syllable whom or mum resting on the top of that. And you are compassion. Now, so we're back on relative perspective of the nature of reality. At that point, just think of like a stick of incense. It burns, just from the, having been lit. It makes perfume. It makes the world a little bit nicer place. And so you just rest in, I am compassion, like the perfume of an incense stick. And I don't have to make any special intention. I just rest in that, and then that perfume, that smoke of the incense just goes in all the different parts of the room, makes the room smell nice. Again, so no matter what the thing is, whether it's a piece of excrement in the corner over there, or there's something else over here, I just stay authentically, I am compassion. I am like a stick of incense, I'm making a perfume. Nothing is more powerful than my dedication to that. May I be of benefit. And again, not like, again, being extreme about it, just saying, okay, may I be of benefit to the best of my ability in whatever situation manifests. And you rest in that. Okay, so that's whom or mum. Okay, and you rest in that. And the analogy, what I'm talking about though, is appreciating just as the smoke of the incense pervades the room slowly because it's just molecules of perfume in the air and stuff, and finally that makes the room smell really nice because of interdependence. Like that, then make my compassion just have the strength to rest in its compassion. Okay. So, those are your meditations for now. Now we're within a few minutes of being at 1 o'clock, so we're going to go for lunch. But so we have the foundation of our practice. All of it's just graduated path, wonderful stuff. From now until enlightenment, I'm going for the Buddha Dharma Sangha. Buddha is the inspiration. Teachings are the real jewel that helps me. As they think, that Sangha is my friends. It's like I remember attending Lama Zopa, and Lama Zopa gives a talk, and of course it goes till 3 a.m. For those of us that have been around Lama Zopa. Anyway, and all it is that he suddenly remembers something and he wants to talk about it. And he thinks, well, these people need this information, and that's why he keeps talking and talking and talking and talking, talking, on and on and on. Which is Lama Zopa. It's beautiful. I mean, you were so precious to have such an incredibly eccentric Lama as Lama Zopa. I mean, I can say honestly, I've translated for some very holy Lamas and very special Lamas, and none of them could say, whoa, Lama Zopa's in another universe, And I appreciate it because they still go to bed and they go out to watch a movie and this and that. I mean, forget it with Lama Zopa. No, he's completely pure. Anyway, a little off topic. So, so we take refuge from now into enlightenment. And what I was thinking of is that the Dharma actually, the definitions, again, you study, but the definition of the path is your stream of consciousness. And when you take refuge, you're taking the real refuge is the teachings, the Dharma. And what really gives you protection is that you practice that in the stream of your consciousness, and you are protected. So it's all about inner practice. Is what it's all about, which is really precious. Anyway, so let me think. Well, one final story. Treacher Rinpoche, he gave, I had the great luxury of being a student of his and even doing private translations for him sometimes for initiations. Geshe Thupten Loden from Australia, he's passed away now. I was his student for a little while in Chenrezig Institute in Australia, and he came to India with one of his chief students called Toby, and he wanted Toby to have the Yamataka initiation and something else, and he needed a translator. I got the translator. Not so happy. Just the three of us in a room with Treacher Rinpoche. So precious. Anyway, so Treacher Rinpoche, though, in the middle of the teaching, here, I found a red cord. So, you always get given a red cord to wear when you go to initiation. And what it is it's actually 2 meters long, or about, your arm span long is what it should be. It's folded 3 times to represent your body, speech, and mind. And it's got 3 knots in it, which represent protection of body, speech, and mind. And then the Lama takes it and he presses his Vajra on it, and then he gives it to you, and you put it around your neck, or you put it on your wrist, or wherever you want to put it, and like that. So he says that's the external. The special meaning, though, is that it's red, which means that your gurus have great love for you, great attachment for you. That's their love. But the real protection, because this is a protection cord you wear from tonight until tomorrow when you get the initiation, the real protection is love. If you have big love in your heart, nothing will bother you. Even if you have like an obnoxious person or something, you have your love is stronger than that. I mean, think of the example of a mother loving of her child, even if the child is crying incessantly. She just loves her child. She bears it. Deals with it. So the real meaning of a blessing cord read when you get initiation or other things is love. That if you have deep love in your heart, you are protected from all negativity because you wish sentient beings to have happiness in the cause of happiness. Okay. But then the more mundane side is it represents body, speech, and mind with 3 knots, which protects you from that. It's blessed by the Lama, and we all have this wonderful faith that our Lamas are incredible. So we think that we're deeply protected, and we go to bed and sleep, waiting for the next morning. So that's perfect. Hey, it's 1 o'clock, or for me it's 1 o'clock. For you it's 12 o'clock, lunchtime. Okay, so we can do the dedication prayers. And one thing, again, when you come back to karma, I don't think it's emphasized enough that, okay, we did something good. We had a good motivation. Well, the really good way to increase your karma is be happy. I'm really happy that I attended a Dharma talk. I'm not talking about my Dharma talk. I'm talking about anything to do with Dharma, anything to do with being spiritual, anything to do with being a nice person, being a bodhisattva. If you do something, practice a little generosity or something, be happy about it, because that really increases the karma. So happiness is really important. So hopefully I think you're happy. I had fun. Thank you very much. Nice group of people. So we can do, Wilson, can we do a dedication prayer of some sort, please? But do think of it and just, hey, may I become a better, the way I think of it, okay. I just took 2 hours of my life. I dedicated to becoming more enlightened, having a more enlightened life. And that is my offering for the benefit of all sentient beings. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has risen not diminish, but increase forevermore. And I mean, the Tibetan is really nice, but okay, we'll maybe do that at the end. Okay, good. So thank you very much, Lobsang. Thank you very much for the host. I never know how to pronounce when there's an X in front of a name, but Ella. Okay, Ella, and then Tom, and Christy, and Laura, and Yeshi, and Karen, and John. Okay, anyway, so see you in an hour and a half. Have a nice lunch. Eat with a good, eat that you live a long life, that you can practice the Dharma and benefit both yourself, other people, and the next person in line. Good. Okay, take care. Okay, I guess we're going to sign off and we'll log back in an hour and a half. Okay.